We're excited to have with us today Hasnain Sheikh, who is the CEO of Jazari.
Lack of credit for the space was a very clear problem that all of them were facing. They had a banking app, they had a remittance app. Give them one app which would take care and remove all the other apps. Give them banking, give them remittances, one network, one brand. The total journey has been 2.5 years, pioneering Remit Now, Pay Later in multiple markets. We are also pioneering Receive Now, Pay Later. And the way we have approached it is we take 100 data points from their open banking data, and within those we are able to assess their creditworthiness and their ability to repay. While we're giving them credit, we don't want to take away from the financial wellness part. It facilitates a remittance to the home country. So this is 9% FX protected, and we feel that this is perhaps one of the more underserved communities.
In my own country, for example, remittances represent 50% of GDP.
It's an amazing product.
So you're really helping them in managing that wealth and actually growing their wealth. Welcome to Access Tomorrow. I'm your host, Leila Serhan. In each episode, we tackle commerce from various perspectives, from small business owners to financial institutions and fintechs. We explore ideas and strategies that drive growth. This podcast is brought to you by Visa. We're excited to have with us today Hasnain Sheikh, who is the CEO of Jazari. Jazari is transforming payment technology and cross-border banking with its Remit Now, Pay Later service. Our discussion will cover the motivation behind Jazari's creation, its influence in countries such as Pakistan and Egypt, and how it aids freelancers in credit assessment, wealth management, and navigating the dynamic landscape of regulations. Let's get started. Hasnain, welcome to the show.
Thank you so very much for having me.
It's great to have you in the beautiful city of Istanbul.
Absolutely.
So Hasnain, my first question is just, what was your main motivation or your aha moment behind the creation of Jazari? And how does it aim to actually revolutionize the payment tech space?
The journey started off in the UK.
Okay.
And we wanted to be a Sharia-compliant neobank or
In the
EMI play in the UK. And we spoke to about 100 people at length. And, other than the commercials and business case aside, we really got to understand their behavior and their pain points. And what we found out is that all of them were remitters, and that was their primary sort of use case within a certain, obviously, income segment. So when we spoke to them, they said, lack of credit for the space was a very clear problem that all of them were facing.
Yeah.
And on top of it, a lack of a Sharia-compliant credit option. Other than that, the remittances, we found a lot of it was still done in cash. They were still juggling multiple apps. So they had a banking app or two banking apps. They had a remittance app or two remittance apps or three remittance apps where they were consistently checking the rates. And there was an oscillation in the instant credit rates. So the moment came then that there is a clear need, if we fix the main problem and the smaller problems, to give them one app which would take care and remove all the other apps. Give them banking, give them remittances, and give them Remit Now, Pay Later or lending in a manner that was suitable to them. And that was the aha moment at that time.
How many years did this journey take you?
The total journey has been 2.5 years.
Okay.
And the Remit Now, Pay Later has been about 2 years. And even then, it took us some time to come out. And when we were talking about it at the time with other people, a friend and an advisor said, look, you just have to come out and own it. This is what you're doing, right? That is your underlying main point that you're addressing. So own it and take it. And we've never looked back since then.
Amazing. And so, thinking of sending money overseas, obviously, you talked about the needs of those users. How are you adapting to the changing needs of these users? Obviously, we know in the payment space, consumer behavior changes all the time. But especially when we think of transaction speed and the cost of the transaction, which most of the time are also two big pain points.
It is indeed. And I think as I had said a little earlier, right, they may go directly into an account, but there is a lot of room in that space. But when we talk about speed and when we talk about cost, the approach that we took was, again, something that doesn't exist today in the world, which is putting big remittance companies and MTOs into a marketplace and letting customers decide either by brand who they want to go with, or speed who they want to go with, or cost who they want to go with, and give them the preference that they want to take. By default, the behavior is that it offers them the cheapest route there. But in other countries like Bangladesh, we have 3 options, like instant credit, T+1, T+2. So we have...
Okay. You give the choice.
We give the choice to the customer. But I think the marketplace addresses a lot of that. On that marketplace is also a Visa Direct option. And I think what we understood at the time was that we should bank both sides of the corridor at the same time to further reduce speed, further increase speed and reduce cost in the long run, which we feel is the future of how we're looking to do this.
Excellent. And you talked about credit, which is one of the pain points that you mentioned. Can you explain how Jazari actually assesses the creditworthiness of its clients?
So obviously there are so many companies out there which are lending to this segment, and there's no right or wrong answer as to how it's going to work. So the way we have approached it is we take their open banking data and we take 100 data points from their open banking data. There are 100 main data points and 300 sub data points that we use. And within those, we are able to assess their creditworthiness and their ability to repay. And at the same time, it's based on an AI and ML foundation, which helps us learn across the portfolio, across different types of people. But ultimately, what the AI and ML does for us is that we will no longer be on a portfolio basis. So it's going to be personalized for a Leila or for a Hasnain as to what your needs are. And in the future, your lending rate, there's not a rate, but your fee could be different from my fee based off of your... So there's no blended portfolio. So you get rewarded for good behavior.
That's amazing. So an alternative score using open banking data with highly personalized, I would say, credit.
Absolutely.
Provide to...
Absolutely.
And Sharia compliant.
And Sharia compliant.
Amazing.
You know, on that note, you have to understand, when you look at the UK, approximately 60% of migrant remittances that leave the UK go to a Muslim. 50% in UAE, 50% in Saudi. And, you know, these people typically are the same worldwide. They spend 13, 14 hours working. They're very close to their religion. So the idea was to be inclusive, not exclude people, but be inclusive by having a Sharia compliant option. So people are comfortable with their faith and their belief set.
That's great. And I think, I mean, you would think that it's a niche market, but it's actually quite a significant market. When you think about some of these numbers. We know those corridors are quite big in the biggest scheme of
Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Egypt,
of course,
Morocco. They're all predominantly Muslim countries.
So you mentioning those countries?
Yes.
Pakistan, Egypt, Nigeria, Bangladesh.
Yes.
Countries that have very high inflation. We know that.
Yes.
Right. So how are you helping in this kind of environment those countries? Because we know they have high inflation, and like you said, they rely heavily on remittances.
It's amazing how governments and regulators will listen to you when you say we have a product to enhance incoming remittances into the country, because their sole existence as a nation is based off of an import-export relationship, right? It's a very macroeconomic thing. But if you look at global remittances, they are growing at 1.2, 1.3%. Right? So currently at about 800 billion officially, And then you have the Hundi and Hawala market, which we estimate to be at least half of the official market size. So this is a $1.2, $1.3 trillion game. So by doing what we're doing, we want to convert the Hawala into the formal channel, number one, by offering customers something additional. But what their main interest is the ability to grow remittances. So we lend up to at about 40% of their previous, that is the cap. So your previous 6 months. So we lend during the remittance flow, right? And it's always a case of them wanting to send more money to their loved ones. Wedding, medical emergency, schooling, these events you see, right? And they all borrow, by the way. We've checked this informally. The borrowing it exists, and they all borrow from each other, return the money, etc. We're just sort of democratizing it. But what it does for countries like this is that it helps grow remittances at 4 to 5% versus 1%. So they love the fact that, you're lending outside of the country to enhance the remittance volume. So it's being very, very well received.
And into the formal channels for sure. So.
Through the formal channels.
And so you talked about the partnerships that you built on both sides, and that you bank the person or the two parties at the same time. So can you talk a little bit about how partnering with both sides of the remittance corridor creates more opportunity for payment schemes?
It's a fantastic question, because I think this is the future of remittances. We've seen a lot of companies successfully use corridor-specific approaches without taking any names. There are US-Philippine corridor specialists, US-Africa corridor specialists. And, they were focusing on corridors, and it was contextualized marketing, wrapping it into one. But what we feel is the future is having one network, one brand, and ideally, the optimal rail that you have on both sides of the corridor. So you're banking effectively the household versus just the sender. And no need for credentials, no need for long IBANs, no need to enter a 16-digit PAN or an expiry or anything else like that. The information is already there, and it's a seamless customer journey to be able to remit to both sides. But what that does for us is that while we are pioneering remit now, pay later in multiple markets, we are also pioneering receive now, pay later in Pakistan. So we are lending to both sides of the corridor, which could potentially enhance household income by 80% every month.
That's amazing. And so you're talking about credit.
And sorry, so I didn't answer your question fully. So the opportunity for the payment schemes is that you've got a card on one side, and you've got a card on the other side. And Visa has this amazing rail called Visa Direct. And I feel that in the future, this will bring down the friction in these transactions. So the opportunity basically is being able to conduct across these networks card-to-card transactions without any friction for the customer.
And like you said, without having to enter lengthy information.
Nothing.
Dropping in the middle of your transaction, and you could even send to a mobile number and it will be received on the card. But you mentioned credit quite a lot, but we know that financial wellness is not only about credit.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think you've been also, as Jazari, working on helping people in their financial wellness, I would say, the financial well-being. So can you talk a little bit more about this part?
Absolutely. I think there are multiple avenues to financial wellness and including people financially. I think the old concept was if we give them a wallet or an account, that's financial inclusion. But there are two parts to financial inclusion. The credit part and the other part, the wellness part, right? So while we're giving them credit, we don't want to take away from the financial wellness part. We estimate the financial wellness market within the migrant segment to be about 5% of global remittance volume. That is an internal estimate, right?
Okay.
That's about $40 billion a year. which at this point goes under the mattress for all practical purposes.
Okay.
Right? So diaspora bonds are a very common tool, but governments have limited channels in which to distribute those bonds to their people. It's difficult for countries like Pakistan, Nigeria, Egypt to go to a US, to go to 50 countries and, register, a bond, go through the hassle and the process. And then there was the India model, which basically allowed customers to remit the money back to their home country and open an account here locally where the money lands, and then you can buy diaspora bonds. Diaspora bonds by nature are FX protected, right? High yield. Yeah. So if you talk about the UK, a 1-year saving rates will get you about 5% on the GBP. And there's a whole case study on how Goldman Sachs, with their Marcus product, swept the market by going 75 bips above market.
Okay.
This is 400 bips above market. So this is 9% FX protected. And there's so many cases like this. There's a Nigeria bond, there's a Kenya bond, there's a Pakistan bond, there's a Bangladesh bond. It's difficult for them to distribute it.
Yeah.
These are the people you want to be in their hands. So it facilitates a remittance to the home country, and people get, anything beyond a 5 to 7% return on FX. I'll go globally and ask. It's an amazing product if you can use it.
100%. So you're really helping them in managing their wealth and actually growing their wealth as well.
And Sharia compliant.
That's a very important point. There's another segment that you're also targeting with your solution, which is the freelancers.
Yes.
And we know that in countries like Pakistan and Egypt, they are a big contributor to remittances.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of talent in those markets.
Yes.
And they export their talents all over the globe. So how are you actually catering to this segment, which always set, between, are they really businesses or are they individuals?
We view them as a zero employee micro enterprise.
Okay.
And we feel that this is perhaps one of the more underserved communities that are out there. Now, by nature, if we take the case of Pakistan, for example, we estimate that there are officially there are 4 million freelancers. We estimate that to be more. But through traditional channels, they bring in $400 or so million as per official numbers.
Okay.
But that can't be true if you do the math. So if 1 million people alone at $20 an hour were making $200 for 10 hours a month, which is, we're saying exclude the other 4 or 5 million, that's $200 million a month, that's $2.5 billion. And we feel that it's actually a much higher market than that. But they're underrepresented because it's difficult for them to have dollar accounts outside, so they have limited options today. They have the likes of Wise and Payoneer, which are expensive and cumbersome for them to use. So we are trying to close the gap on that first. In the first step, we're offering them an account where they get to receive their money, number one, specialized for remittance people. In fact, I think it's a great opportunity for Visa and us together because Visa has this amazing product which offers, from GitHub to Microsoft, which we are planning to introduce for them in the future. But ultimately, if you look at the nature of freelance business, what happens is that on networks like Fiverr and Upwork, you have an assignment which is 2 weeks long, 3 weeks long, 4 weeks long, right? And you don't get paid until you complete the assignment. So our idea is that we allow people to draw from that assignment based off of, again, it's an algorithm, earlier than what they have. So they can recoup the money earlier and then bring it back home.
So it's kind of getting paid now, then you pay later.
Absolutely.
It's amazing because we know that it's a big pain point for freelancers.
It is.
Their working capital.
It is.
And most of the time when they want to invest in their business, for example, acquire a new skill go take a course, they'll have to draw from their own personal money.
Yes.
Nobody is there to actually help them.
Yes.
Or people don't think that they are credit worthy.
Yes.
To help them in their working capital. This is great, and
it's unfortunate, because migrants or freelancers, without them, a lot of these countries cannot survive on a day-to-day basis. But yet, there is friction, there is lack of credit, and they truly deserve that, I think.
It's true. I mean, we know that remittances are the lifeblood for many countries. In my own country, for example, remittances represent 50% of GDP.
Yes.
So it's without remittances, the country would definitely collapse.
I want to add another point, if you may allow me,
Sure.
in this piece. There's another very important element. Being the father of two young, beautiful, empowered girls.
Right.
If you look at the makeup, and I would assume that it's similar in different markets, the population of women in Pakistan is 51%, but they only own 13% of the bank accounts, where the woman should be receiving the incoming remittance. It's usually to a male member of the household, right? Which we want to change. We want to empower women to open these accounts, and there is some science to women being more prudent with their borrowing and their spending.
There's also a lot of science around when women are empowered financially, they actually do good to their community.
Absolutely.
And they will build better
Absolutely. Absolutely.
all over. And I think our countries need them.
Absolutely. Bangladesh is a fantastic example.
Oh, yes.
Of that.
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely. So, I mean, all of this cross-border flow of money, obviously, regulators play a big part in this. So I'm interested to know, how do you navigate the regulatory landscape in those countries that you're operating in?
Being in the fintech space for 20 years, I tell my team and I tell people that fintech is as much about customer journey, product, all the good things about tech, but it's that. But before all of that, it's about compliance and fitting in with the regulator. Obviously, you guys are at the forefront of this, and you know how important these relationships are. We have a very simple approach to our play. We are working entirely through partnerships. So we have obviously a number of different stacks. So we have the banking stack, completely different set of regulations. We have the money transfer stack, again, completely different set of regulations. If you thought that the first two were complicated, lending licenses are complex, difficult to get. They're not like, going in the UK as a case in point. You can become an agent of an EMI in a short or a shorter period of time. And I think for us, the goal was to partner with reputable companies and use their licensing and prove our model first, rather than going and getting our own licensing, wasting our money and our investor money in first, just waiting a longer period of time. It's rather we prove the model, hit the ground running, and work through our partners. And I think we've gotten a really good response from the regulators in all of the markets that we are currently pursuing at that time for this approach.
Yeah, I think the regulators are also like you said, I mean, governments, regulators, when you talk to them about remittances, it's such an important, again, part of the GDP of the country. So it's important that if you're able to do it transparently, with speed, at a cost efficient and with a cost efficient way, they will be definitely welcoming to any solutions. And we've noticed this definitely when we have those conversations, specifically around Visa Direct and the compliance that sits behind Visa Direct, which is always very welcome by regulators across the region and across the globe. Hasnain, I'm going to turn to our last question.
Yes.
We ask like a pivot question, let's say, and it's about if you can share with us a pivotal moment in your career. I mean, something that's really marked you, whether personally or professionally, that you felt got you where you are today?
There have been a few, I think. But, I realized early on in my career that I think it's very difficult to work for someone else once you have tasted the spoils of being an entrepreneur. While no one sees the difficult, they see the pinnacle only. They don't see the iceberg under the water. But, doing stuff before time has always been, it keeps reigniting me personally to do stuff. So I did stuff well before time over the last 2 decades, whether globally or in country. And that keeps me going and keeps me wanting to try and keep innovating, keep moving, keep trying different things. But I think this time round, being older, wiser, hopefully, with more white hair, I think the pivot really at this point was to do something that will actually help people rather than thinking about, oh, this is going to be a great product and there are going to be millions of people using this. The underlying sort of basis is that does it fit in with my personal belief set? And does it fit in with my life goals? I think the lens at 29, when I started this journey, and at 49 is very, very different.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Hasnain.
It's been a pleasure.
True builder, an innovator, but also you do it with impact. It was great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Hasnain. Thank you for joining us today. We're committed to providing you with fresh and bold insights from our region. So don't miss our next episode. Until then, stay informed, stay inspired, and always strive to stay ahead of tomorrow. Thank you once again for watching and listening to Access Tomorrow, brought to you by Visa.